What if your community could be as engaging as your favorite game? Today on Talk About Your Community, I'm joined by Amy Jo Kim, a game design legend and community architect whose fingerprints are on The Sims, Rock Band, and even Netflix. We'll unpack how her journey design framework can turn casual members into loyal superfans, and why the future of community engagement might look a lot more like play than work. If you're building or growing a community, this is one you'll want to catch. Kalisa, roll the opening. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may happen to be. You have tuned in to Talk About Your Community. I'm Todd Nilson, your host with Clocktower Advisors. And on this show, we greet a variety of perspectives around building effective, trustworthy, cozy, and ultimately valuable online community spaces where people can connect, create joyfully, and really live better lives overall. I'm glad you're here. If you're here for the first time, this is a live interactive show, and so always look for your questions and comments in the comments area. And some of these we may promote to the screen down below so that we can address them with our guests that we have. And the show usually runs about 30 to 45 minutes. And so really looking forward to today's show in particular. I've been following Amy Jo Kim's work since at least 2015. And I'm a big fan of game thinking and journey design work that she's put together. So I was over the moon excited when she agreed to come on to today's show. Before I bring her on screen, I just wanted to mention to everybody that we are running live on LinkedIn here, and you can sign up for all of our shows by following the company page for Clocktower Advisors. It's where we promote everything. I do cross-promote it over to my feed as well. But if you want to give back, please follow our company page and go ahead and give comments and likes to the show. It helps us show up a little bit better for everybody else so that they can find us. Also, we have a YouTube channel, and that's also Clocktower Advisors, and would love to interact with you out there. I try to reply to everyone's comments all the time. Just some quick housekeeping. Our next upcoming shows are going to be equally fun and hopefully edifying for you as well. I'm going to have back on the show friend and colleague, George C.O.C. Samuels. We're going to be talking about micro empires and macro impact. I'll say it again, micro empires and macro impact. This is going to be a show about how AI is enabling teams to really build things more quickly and more powerfully, small teams in particular. And George is an innovator in the entrepreneurial and AI space, and really looking forward to having him on the show. And he is far more articulate than I. And then that's going to be on July the 11th, and then coming up on July the 25th, I'm going to be having Dr. Ruth Diaz on, who is a pioneer in looking at how you deal with trolling and moderation online. We're going to be having her on for turning the ban hammer into a hand. And I think that's going to be a very helpful, actionable event as well. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn to the guest of the show here today. The work that Amy Jo Kim has done has been far-reaching, and she's worked for some big recognizable brands and names. And very excited to have her as a guest on the show here. Anyone who's done some work in the gaming space will probably recognize her name. And I, without further ado, want to bring her on stage here. Amy Jo, welcome to the show. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm trying to remember. Are you on West Coast? What is your time zone you're in?
Pacific time. I'm here in Silicon Valley.
Oh my goodness. I got you up early in the morning here to be on the show. I'm grateful for you making a little bit of time for us.
I've been on calls all morning. So I'm a early morning person, and I have a lot of European clients. So
Got it.
It
Yeah.
all works out, but I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you so much. So, as you know, the focus of the show is around building communities online, building spaces where people feel included, seen, engaged, happy. And I think it bears a lot of similarities to work that you do around game design and product design overall. Um, I know you've moved from neuroscience into blockbuster games and communities. How would you say understanding human behavior shapes the ways that you design for engagement?
Um, all the time as groundwork. So, understanding human behavior is really fundamental, and it's very nuanced and complex because there's humans and how they are, but then there's how they behave in situations and how they respond to social situations, which is what community is all about, of course. And there's a lot of different frameworks and a lot of different theories to help us manage that. And none of them are gospel, right? They're all informative. So I was just having this conversation with someone who's fairly new to product design, who's looking for the framework that solves the problems. And it's really about absorbing all the frameworks around human nature and being able to then make decisions that are informed by that. So a good example is self-determination theory. Has that been something you've talked about on the podcast?
It has been, yeah. It comes up again and again, and it definitely comes up in my work. Autonomy and the ability to sort of pick your path. That seems like a very powerful driver of motivation.
That's one, right. So self-determination theory has three drivers: autonomy, picking your path, having control over your own circumstances; mastery, which is the desire to get better at something that matters; and purpose or relatedness, which are essentially the same thing. It's being part of something larger than yourself. And sometimes a particular community or product or game is super strong at one, like Duolingo is really strong at the mastery part of that. Whereas a lot of social games are particularly strong at, especially the ones on like Roblox, right? That mastery isn't necessarily so great. They're very strong on relatedness and community and feeling like you're part of a fan club or a fan base. So there's a lot of different ways to tap into motivation. There's not just one. But I found that understanding basic psychology and then being able to also understand specific people or specific groups of people and how they interact in a new situation are both really important. But whether it's game design or product design or community management or, setting up a great marketing campaign,
Mm-hmm.
all of those are grounded in understanding human nature, understanding psychology.
I really like how you've applied that in some specific concepts that have come up in your work, and I'm wondering if we could maybe cover these really briefly at a high level. People can dive in a little bit more into your own excellent video channel that you have, but some concepts I think related to what you're talking about. Creating a super fan funnel, managing sticky loops, and concept testing. These seem to be three things that have really kind of stood out for me that relate really strongly to community building.
Absolutely. So let's touch on those one by one. Building a super fan funnel is another way of saying find and attract a small group of exactly the right people, and you can grow from there. This is something that anyone who's ever run a community is going to probably raise their hand and say, yeah, I can relate. But it's very true for product development. It's very true for game development. It's true for anything, which is new, especially new and innovative products and games don't start with the mass market. They start with a really narrow group of early adopters. anything interesting is going to start with a small group of people that have some sort of urgent need. And if you can craft screening materials and attractive materials specifically for those people, you will be building a much stronger foundation, whether it's a community, a product, or a game, than if you try and go broad right from the start. And that's really what a super fan funnel is about. Sticky loops.
Well, so sorry. So maybe if we could dig into that one just a moment. So I think this is an intensely interesting question for community builders, especially for organizations that are trying to launch a new community from scratch. They may have a group of customers. There might be some people that they think of as potential people to invite. What I've seen and some other community builders have seen time and again is, how do we know who those people are who can be the super fans? Like what do you use as screenings for that? Is it like you talked a little bit about materials? Is there like a landing page that's crafted? Is there some kind of survey or something like that? Yeah.
So the core asset is a screener, not a landing page. A landing page can be part of a set of assets, but in order to find those people, you craft a screener. And we've built a Gen AI tool that helps you do this very quickly. And I wrote about how to craft this screener in detail in my book, Game Thinking. So there's a lot of material out there. There's also a step-by-step guide on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of material out there about the details of crafting a screener. But you have to really, what you're essentially doing is you're forming hypotheses and then gathering data and then iterating your hypotheses. So it's going to start with, well, who do we think it is? Well, we're not sure. Okay, so let's write a screener to help us get more sure. So the most important thing to understand about the recruiting traits that go into the screener, because the screener is driven by defining the traits or circumstances or psychographics that somebody has that you want to recruit. It's never like, millennials, blah, blah, blah. Like that, those are just demographics. That's not what recruiting is,
right,
or this kind of thing. So the most important takeaway that if you can get this one thing right, a lot of other stuff doesn't matter, is that you need to figure out how to recruit people that through their behavior show you that they have a need and they're trying to solve that need. That is the best description of early adopters. And what I mean by that is figure out how to write a screener so you can ask them questions that show they've been trying to solve the problem that your community solves. Because just, here's a community never works. People are busy. They have to have a reason they're going to go there. What are they going to get out of it? So if you can, maybe they're looking for other communities. Maybe it's a support community and they're trying to get better support and they were frustrated. So the most important thing about building your superfan funnel and building your screening materials and figuring out how to find the right audience, there's quite a bit of nuance to that. But the most important thing is see if you can form a hypothesis about what actions that person would take that would best show you they are really trying to solve that problem. Maybe they used a competitor and were frustrated. That would be an amazing person to recruit, right? Maybe they are through word of mouth asking for help. Maybe that's relevant for what you're doing. But it's behavior trumps attitudes. When you're doing screening, who people say they are, how they say they might do things in the future is not very reliable. How they've behaved in the recent past, much more reliable.
Thanks for letting me dig into that, because I think this is such a core concept when trying to launch any kind of online space, to understand the motivations and the drivers and the behaviors then that are going to make it. Like I always kind of think of it as what's closest to your core identity or existential needs that you may have. The closer we can hit to that mark, the more likely it is that they're going to act. So no, thank you for that. I love that. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow. Like you were going to go on to talk a little bit about
No, I like
well.
drilling in. I really like drilling in and like coming up with something immediately actionable, right?
Yeah.
Sticky loops. So in gaming, there's this concept of the core loop. Sometimes it's called the core engagement loop or the core compulsion loop or the this or that. But the idea is there's something that the player is going to do over and over and over again that they're going to spend most of their time doing in this game. And sometimes it's a chain of activities that involve resource management, right? Like in a any kind of battle game, there's usually a resource management or strategy game. So there's a core loop that involves a set of decisions that someone's going to do over and over and over and over again in your game. That also is true of a product or a community. There's going to be something that re-engages your members. It might be an event. It might be a Monday update. It might be a question of the week. There's different things that engage people, right? That are going to happen over and over again. In a product, in Canva, it might just be, I need to make a graphic. There's lots of different things that can engage you. But that core loop is the beating heart of your app, program, community, game, whatever you're building. If you want to drive retention, that core loop, you have to get that right, or you'll just have a leaky bucket. And most people don't think about that up front when they build something, when they set out. Let's say you're an executive and you're going to oversee this community launching. Yes, you need to figure out who are your super fans, how are you going to track them? But it's like, okay, what is the re-engagement rhythm, the pulse of re-engagement, that the core loop that's going to provide value? And then how do we make that sticky? So that's sticky loops. So first is really thinking about re-engagement over time and modeling a simple system that involves feedback, not just rewards, but feedback, so that somebody can get better at something, which can be very simple. It can get better at, make progress. That can mean a lot of different things. But the core thing about sticky loops to remember is the biggest mistake people make is they just have an activity that stays the same. Do it over and over and over again, come to the event, da, da, da. What makes something sticky and interesting is when the more you engage, the deeper you go, the better it gets. Maybe you could say, oh, well, we should just add points and badges. No, that usually, unless it's deeply tied to meaning, it just is clutter. What meaningful progress is maybe the deeper you get, the more privileges you have. Maybe your posts get highlighted, or you can start to host your own meetings or things like that. So unlocking more powers, more access, more visibility, are all really great ways to make a core loop interesting over time by acknowledging that the people that are getting more engaged over time should be able to have a better experience. And I've done a ton of that kind of work in communities. But you see this a lot in games. I mean, that's essentially how most games are structured and they work. But the same thing applies to products. I mean, if you think about TikTok, you can say, well, how does TikTok get better? You can build followers. The algorithm is getting better and better and better the more data you build. 3 months into TikTok, it's way more customized to you than at the beginning. That's another way to get better, is to really customize the experience for the user. And we're seeing a lot more of that now with AI. The one other thing to remember about sticky loops, and this is a little bit of an advanced concept, but again, if you remember one thing from this conversation, this is This is going to help you speed run retention. Design your core loop around an existing habit that your customer already has, and that will help you engage them because it lowers the friction. This is called habit stacking. And you hear about it a lot in the world of habit building. Easy to understand, much harder to implement. But again, we've built some tools that make that easier because it can be hard to do. So what is this idea? Let's say you're building a community. If you can find out what most of your community members are already doing, for instance, let's say they all have to prepare for like a Monday strategy meeting with their team, or there's like a Friday retrospective they always have at work, or let's say that they tend to browse the web during their lunch hour, whatever it is. There are habits they have already in their life. And if you can slot into those habits with the way you design your core loop, your core engagement, you have just made your job much easier. Mm-hmm. That's the other part of a sticky loop, is not just designing from the point of view of the community and the product, but designing for your customers' existing life and psychology.
That's really wonderful insight, and I think about trying to apply that to communities that I advise or I manage and work that they do. One place where I've seen some successful, I'll call it a core loop behavior, but I think that it's in need of some enhancement that I've been trying to think about, is a community where people are trying to quit smoking or vaping. And one of the core behaviors in that particular community is they come in and they commit to a daily pledge. This has been a long-standing tradition in the community. So, it's a fairly simple mechanic. They come into the discussion thread. They say, "I pledge not to smoke today," and I extend my hand to the next person, and someone else replies in there. And it's been a very reinforcing community connection building, relatedness building kind of experience. But it's a habit that doesn't really change over time, just beyond sort of maintaining your quit. And I sometimes wonder, like, is that enough, or do we need to do some habit stacking on top of that? Do we need to unfold some additional benefits within the experience to make that work?
And that really leads into journey design, which is, if you're at that point where you realize, oh, we've got this habit and it's flat, right? It's just the same. It's not changing in an interesting way over time. Mm-hmm. We want to add a journey to it, right? We want the experience of joining this community to not just be, okay, I'm in, I'm doing it, let's go. But we want there to be some sort of journey. But how do you do that? Mm-hmm. So most people start with mechanics, partly because it's easy, partly because there's a lot of companies out there that are very invested in telling you that it's all in the mechanics and let's put some mechanics into it.
So mechanics, like I'll award a badge to you or something like that? Or
yeah, and gamification backfires often when it's not connected to a real journey. Mm-hmm. So most people that do that, and sometimes it can work really well within a context where the rest of the community is really working, but by itself, a lot of people will give you badges, for instance, in a community. They'll say, well, let's acknowledge them for the number of posts. Oh, you post, or let's acknowledge them for posting every day. And you've just incentivized people to just go here. And because then they get the badge with the least amount of effort, mm-hmm. right? So if most people and most gamification starts by just surfacing the easy to measure stuff. It's that simple. And that's usually not a sustainable strategy because it's not connected to a real journey. It's just, oh, we can measure this, so let's like put badges on it. Mm-hmm. But where it gets interesting is when you take what you can measure with your system and connect it to human psychology, and in particular to your customers' goals, what they want to make progress on in the community. And then you can design a progression system that might have badges in it, or it might have streaks, or it might have scores or levels, but it's not thrown in there because, oh, look, it's mechanics. It's supporting a journey very intentionally. It's a very different experience. And that's something that we actually open with a progression design exercise in our Journey Design Masterclass, specifically because it's the missing piece in most people's design philosophy. There's really no frameworks out there that help, regular old people building stuff on the internet of all kinds create a journey. It's tricky to create. It's like, what do? Do you just like study game design? So we've put it into a step-by-step system. And what we've learned is that if you start by really thinking through, what does progress mean to my customers? Where, if they got to point X in 3 months, or in 1 month or in 6 months, and then you work backwards from there, what does that look like? What if we want to unlock new powers, new access, new privileges? What is meaningful to them if this is the journey that they want to go on? So figuring out what the journey should be and what makes sense in your specific community is incredibly powerful, because it's the backbone that organizes all your events, all your content. Like, it organizes everything. But it can be tricky to find, because you have to stop thinking about mechanics and features and all that and just think about your end-to-end customer experience as an integrated system.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And definitely thinking about the community members' journey over time is something that I end up trying to map through those experiences, but it's something I feel like I could get a lot better at. So I'm definitely going to be checking out your course in that. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to a friend of the show, Serena Snowd, who chimed in here, and she says, so great to hear from Amy Jo Kim, someone who's done the work and pioneered in content and experience design. Great to see you, Serena. Hello. So Amy Jo, you in your latest project, Journey Maker, you're using AI to help teams map out these 30-day members.
Helping teams storyboard. Yeah. So let's talk about the difference between journey mapping and storyboarding. Just journey mapping, presumably many of us are familiar with it. It's mostly a marketing exercise. Sometimes it extends, but it's really mapping the buyer's experience up to conversion or sale. And then after that, it's retention. And often it's mapping messaging, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's journey mapping. I'm a product and game designer, and we do community design as well. Absolutely do that for clients. But we're really rooted in shipping products and games. And so what we found is that there's, it's really easy these days to spin up a prototype, right? Like, let's just talk about where we're at with Gen AI. It used to be kind of hard to prototype. It's so easy now, at least the first like 60%. You can spin up ideas. You can also spin up like UX flows, and you could spin up, show me what this community might look like. There's a lot of things you can do with Lovable and Bolt and Replit and the Cursor, these kind of tools. And that's great. All of that, it will be able to show you a demo of something and a session of using something. None of those tools show you, okay, well, what would this be like over time? What would 30 days of, how would the systems that are in this little demo play out over 30 days? What's the progression model, right? How does the experience change over time? None of those tools provide that. But that's the reality of any interesting product, is it changes over time. So we've evolved storyboarding, and a very sort of a hybrid form of storyboarding, to show, here's the experience over time, to visualize the customer journey. And the reason I jumped in with the term mapping is that most people have never really experienced storyboarding, maybe other than a Google design sprint where you draw a few images of completing a task like buying an airline ticket. But this is storyboarding the whole narrative of your customer's experience.
So I think about this as like almost like a cinematic storyboarding, or like I'm a big comic book nerd, and I tend to think in progression of narrative through visual storytelling approaches. Is that approaching what you're
It's
talking
very
about?
similar, but it's taking the power and the functionality of why movies storyboard before going to production and applying that to product design. And there's a couple of key ideas there that everybody listening can absorb and use. One of them is the idea of story beats. So in comic books and yes, I think thinking about it like a comic book, it's like there's a person and they're in an environment and they're doing stuff, right?
Mhm.
And then there's a screen of some sort that they're interacting with. It might be a laptop screen or a mobile screen, might be both if you've got a web app, right? Depending on where they are. And so what you map out in journey storyboards is your customer using your product over time in their environment through discovery, onboarding, the habit loop, and mastery. And those 4 stages are what we call the customer journey or the product journey or the community journey, right? It's all of those. So by mapping those out, you can now visualize the customer's experience over time and you see it in context. Story beats are the important moments in the narrative. Now, what's tricky about mapping out 30 days of your customer's experience is people get all hung up on visualizing every screen. If you're a UX designer, I was a UX designer for years. If you come out of that, you think, well, okay, there's the login and there's this screen and then there's the next screen. Like you storyboard literally the functionality. And that's task analysis. And that's great. But those aren't story beats. Story beats are you log in, you could show the login screen. You don't have to show all the stuff after it. That's like housekeeping. Story beats are what's the next important moment that they're going to experience that you want to get feedback on, that everybody's designing for. And so this is very similar to a concept from animation that you might be familiar with if you know comic books, called in-betweening. Mm-hmm. So in animation, particularly in old school animation, like in old school Disney, you have the lead animator who draws the action poses of the character. You know, they're here and then they're here and then they're here. And those are the big beats of the story that moves the action forward. In betweening is the junior animator comes in and does all the drawings of going between those poses. Mm-hmm. That's between. Similarly, story beats are lifting up out of every screen, right? Every little detail, every feature, and saying, what's the customer's experience where, you know, yes, they've logged in, but like, great, now it's day 30. Now it's day 60. What's triggering them to log in? What do they do once they're there? What, you know, how do they get there? Is it one click or is it more? How do they end that session, right? What's different on day 30 about their experience than it was on day 2, right? Answering those questions is what you want to do with your story beats. Story beats is embedded into our tool, partly because it's one of the hardest concepts to teach people, to teach them how to decide what's a story beat and what's just a housekeeping screen, right?
Is it fair to say, like, I'm gonna try to put this back in my comic book brain here. These are the moments of resonance in a story, perhaps. This is when
they move the action forward. There are moments that move the action forward that don't necessarily resonate.
Yeah, this is Okay, so this is the moment that Peter Parker's bitten by a radioactive spider. And
well, and in particular, there's a core structure that is very common. We talked before about human psychology, and there's lots of differences between people, but there's also a lot of similarities, like self-determination theory that applies across cultures and across ages. Similarly, in the experience of using digital products and games and communities, there are many similarities with the beats for discovery, onboarding, habit building, and mastery. The discovery beats are always going to be some variation of first impression. Where do you first hear about it? Where are you? Are you on Instagram? Are you talking to a friend? Did you get an ad? Were you hearing about it at work from HR? Where are you? Right? How do you first get the impression? How do you learn more? How do you gather information to make a conversion decision, whether or not you're going to go further? Those are going to be true of discovery always. Similarly with onboarding, when you're onboardings are about learning the ropes, feeling welcome. What are the big beats? What's the first activity you engage in, right? Who's the first person you have some interaction with? And what is that experience like? How do you get any sense of making progress during onboarding? Is there a completion moment where you're like, great, you're done with onboarding? Or does it just kind of fade into the activity? Everybody's going to have to define that. Similarly with your habit loop, what's the trigger that brings them back? What reminds them? There's lots of different kinds of triggers. What's the core activity they engage in when they come back? What feedback do they get about the quality or how well they did that activity, or even that it's done? What's that feedback loop? How do they have a sense that they're making progress in some way? Every loop is going to have those questions. And so what we've done is created like a template with extensions that you can use, like a starter template for, here's the beats. Start by filling in these beats, and then you can finesse it, edit it, etc. But you can think about comic books, but you really want to root it in, okay, we're community designers. What are the key things that we need to address? And once we've addressed those, great, we can get into others.
Brilliant. I love it.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. No, absolutely. I was hoping to be able to tease that out of you. That was wonderful. Amy Jo, I think we're running a little low on time here. This has been wonderful. I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what's exciting you right now. Like what kinds of trends, opportunities in product or community building are grabbing your attention right now? Maybe it's somebody you're reading. Maybe it's something unrelated to the field that's kind of standing out in your imagination at the moment. I'd love to know.
Actually, what's on my mind right now is the opportunities around using Gen AI to accelerate early ideation, early visualization, risk management in projects. I've had 4 or 5 conversations in the last week with really brilliant people who are working on different aspects of what we're working on at Journeymaker, which is putting the power to visualize a product experience with relatively little input into everybody's hands, and using Gen AI to do that. And there's a lot of magic under the hood with doing that. And we could get very nerdy and talk about multi-agent workflows and synthetic personas. But the reason this is so exciting to me is twofold. One, I'm seeing results happen with our work and the work of people that we're collaborating with that are, I never thought I would see. I never thought it could be that good and that useful, which brings up problems when AI is so good. People think they're done, like, oh, it did this. And they sometimes don't realize they still have to have the human touch and edit it. But the amount of time I see Gen AI being able to save by leveraging what is essentially a lot of real world data to create synthetic scenarios and personas, etc. It's incredibly exciting. So I'm excited because I'm seeing results for my clients that things that used to take weeks take hours. And it's amazing. And I can't even tell you how exciting that makes me when I think about the impact it can have on entrepreneurs and creators. The second reason this excites me so much is because I hated synthetic data and synthetic users a year ago. I was so against it. I was like, this is silly. You can't replace talking to real people, which is still true. It's not about replacing it.
Mhm.
But I was very against it. And I was against people that were doing it. I was against relying on it too much in our own work, our own tool. And slowly we began to experiment and find out that it's not an either or thing. It's about how you use it and where you use it. And I've gone through a huge transformation where I have a much more informed and finessed view of how to leverage Gen AI and synthetic personas and, early ideation and storyboarding, how to leverage them where you're not replacing anybody. You still have a human in the loop, but you're able to speed up certain parts of the process that are both tedious and difficult and require a lot of specialized skill. You can speed those parts up. So I think it's very analogous to what we're seeing in, say, radiology, where AI, ChatGPT, can read a CAT scan or an MRI scan and tell you incredible things that radiologists don't catch. But they also have limitations. They make mistakes. So putting that together with a radiologist is the right package, and I think similarly, these tools to help us imagine, well, we want to build a community. Do we have to start by finding our super fans and, doing all the research? Or could we start by imagining who they might be and starting to create some synthetic personas and storyboards that we could then take and test? And now you just saved you and your team 3 to 6 months, easy.
I love that. Yeah, so that resonates with so much. I've been a fan lately of some of Jeremy Utley's work and with Idea Flow. I think just.
I'm not familiar. Tell me. Just give me the nutshell version.
So he's a Stanford professor, runs the D School there, and done a lot of work on innovation and thinking about how to use generative AI. I think it dovetails really nicely with a lot of the things that you're talking about, where he's says, you look at generative AI as a collaborative partner, as not a final answer kind of thing, but as an intelligence augmenter, for what you do. It's not a replacement for, and it's certainly not an oracle. You work with it as a tool to enable you to move faster and more effectively, with things. And it's really that tracks really strongly with me. And I also think about Andy. I always get his last name right. Andy Christadina from Orbit Media in Chicago talks a lot about building sort of synthetic personas, using generative AI. So I definitely want to dive a little more deeply into some of your work there, and I'm sure others may want to as well. Amy Jo, how does someone get better educated about this work that you've been talking about here? I know you have some master classes available, and where would someone go to learn a little bit more about that?
Well, you can go to gamethinking.io. That's my site. But the single best way to learn and to get some nice bonuses and discounts is to join our insider mailing list. So if you go to gamethinking.io/insider, you can sign up to be an insider. You'll be on our mailing list. You can get off there anytime. But you'll get some introductory emails that tell you about what we're up to. We have a YouTube channel where we share a ton of free info. I can't tell you how many people speed ran our YouTube channel and then went and did things. So I'd start there. But we are running a masterclass in July on Maven. And that's a really exciting opportunity for people that want to put what you just heard to use and use Journey Maker to build storyboards and learn how to visualize your product experience and deal with it and tune it and work with it as a system rather than separate pieces. And again, sign up as an insider and you'll find out about it. You will also be able to get 25% off through next Tuesday. If you join our insider mailing list, we're running a very short-term special, and I would be delighted to offer that to everybody who's on your list. So the masterclass runs for 4 weeks, and we walk you through how to do journey design. If you go to gamethinking.io/masterclass, you can learn about it and click through to the Maven course and even sign up to chat with me if you have more questions.
Fabulous. That's really great. So, Amy Jo, before we go, I just want to say again, it's been a great pleasure and honor to speak with you today, and thank you again for making so much time on the show. As a parting thought, is there some term or trend that you've just kind of had enough of, that if you had a magic wand, you could wave it and it would go away forever? Something that maybe comes up that the clients mention, or something that that you really like to expunge from our jargon vocabulary that we have?
The only thing that comes up is I wish there was a better word for gamification. The thing that keeps coming up is that people get very excited about gamification, but they've learned that it means mechanics. And it's really that association that I'm working to break with journey design, because it mostly leads people into a dead end. Mm-hmm. So I wish there was a better word, but I used to just cringe when I heard gamification, but I don't anymore, because they're opening a door. I think gamification is wanting the engagement of games.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah.
And then there's how you implement it. And most people go through a phase where they think it's all about mechanics. They try a bunch of stuff, they fail, and then they show up on my doorstep and say, what's a better way?
Well, and I think, what's led into it from what I've seen is like a lot of the community platforms that are out there have some baseline gamification points, badges, and leaderboards, built into them. And so the mechanics are there. And like a lot of customers, I have to advise them to say, don't even, that's a separate strategy. Like we need.
Let me build on what you said.
Yeah.
It's a strategy. And so one of the threads in our masterclass, our journey design masterclass, is if you want to use points and badges and streaks and leaderboards, we will show you how to do it in a smart way. It's not that you don't ever want to use them.
Yes.
It's that you want to have a backbone concept of what progress means. You want to create a mental model for your customer and a journey for your product experience or your community experience. And once you've got that, then all those mechanics support the model and support the journey. That's what we teach people how to do.
And that is a phenomenal note to end on. Amy Jo, thank you again so much. This is again very gracious of you to spend some time with me today, and with our guests. You have some fans in the stream here. Santana really loved all the things you had to say here. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate that. Again, Amy Jo, I hope we'll be looking at more of your coursework and things you do. Would love to have you back on the show anytime you've got a new product or a new book, anything out. Would love to highlight your work. And in the meantime, those of you who have tuned in, thank you for spending the hour with us. It's been great to have you with us. If you're tuning in on the replay, please drop comments, and I try to answer everybody who comes in. You can find us on YouTube as well as here on LinkedIn. So with that said, please take care of yourselves, because you can't build great communities if you are not taking care of yourself. In the meantime, We will see you back here in a couple of weeks with George C.O.C. Samuels, Micro Empires and Macro Impact. We'll be continuing that discussion about generative AI and its usefulness to teams then. But until then, we will see you online. Take care.